All right, good evening, good people. It is our Thursday Bible study. We are in Genesis 18. I'm excited to read because God is always showing so much of his character in the word. If we just slow down and just read a little bit, it's so much to learn about him. Of course, we can learn how to be better as his children, as his servants. It's just so much to learn about him. And then you fall in love with God all over again as you read more and more. So, if you will, turn your Bibles to Genesis 18 because tonight that is the chapter we are coming from. I'm going to read it through one time, then we're going to look at the PowerPoint. So, if you are on TikTok or Facebook and you want to hop over to my YouTube channel, it is at Getting on Higher Ground 2997, and you can follow me live there because you can see the PowerPoint. Otherwise, you can just listen and follow along with the story because we are just breaking down bit by bit how God is just so good. Previous weeks, in the previous week, we talked about Abram and his name getting changed to Abraham. Um, so his name Abram meant exalted father, Abraham meant father of many, and so he is getting a name change. His wife Sarai also got a name change to Sarah, both meaning princess. And God is speaking the promises that He has for them. So tonight He's confirming that again, and it's going to be a good time. So let's jump into. I'm gonna share my screen so we can read through with. I'm using Bible Gateway to read Genesis 18, and so let's start at the top with verse 1 in New Living Translation. It reads, "The Lord appeared again to Abraham near the oak grove belonging to Mamre. One day, Abraham was sitting at the entrance to his tent during the hottest part of the day. He looked up and noticed three men standing nearby. When he saw them, he ran to meet them and welcomed them, bowing low to the ground. 'My Lord,' he said, 'if it pleases you, stop here for a while. Rest in the shade of this tree while water is brought to wash your feet. And since you've honored your servant with this visit, let me prepare some food to refresh you before you continue on your journey.' 'All right,' they said, 'do as you have said.' So Abraham ran back to the tent and said to Sarah, 'Hurry, get 3 large measures of your best flour, knead it into dough, and bake some bread.' Then Abraham ran to the herd and chose a tender calf and gave it to his servant, who quickly prepared it. When the food was ready, Abraham took some yogurt and milk and the roasted meat, and he served it to the men. As they ate, Abraham waited on them in the shade of the trees. 'Where is Sarah, your wife?' the visitors asked. 'She's inside the tent,' Abraham replied. Then one of them said, 'I will return to you about this time next year, and your wife Sarah will have a son.' Sarah was listening to this conversation from the tent. Abraham and Sarah were both very old by this time, and Sarah was long past the age of having children. So she laughed silently to herself and said, 'How could a worn out woman like me enjoy such pleasure, especially when my master, my husband, is also so old?' Then the Lord said to Abraham, 'Why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, "Can an old woman like me have a baby?" Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son.' Sarah was afraid, so she denied it, saying, 'I didn't laugh.' But the Lord said, 'No, you did laugh.'" Abraham intercedes for Sodom. Verse 16 says, "Then the men got up from their meal and looked out toward Sodom. As they left, Abraham went with them to send them on their way. 'Should I hide my plan from Abraham?' the Lord asked. 'For Abraham will certainly become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. I have singled him out so that he will direct his sons and their families to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. Then I will do for Abraham all that I have promised.' So the Lord told Abraham, 'I have heard a great outcry from Sodom and Gomorrah because their sin is so flagrant. I am going down to see if their actions are as wicked as I have heard. If not, I want to know.' The other men turned and headed toward Sodom, but the Lord remained with Abraham. Abraham approached him and said, 'Will you sweep away both the righteous and the wicked? Suppose you find 50 righteous people living there in the city. Will you sweep it away and not spare it for their sakes? Surely you wouldn't do such a thing, destroying the righteous along with the wicked. Why? You would be treating the righteous and the wicked exactly the same. Surely you wouldn't do that. Should not the judge of all the earth do what is right? And the Lord replied, If I find 50 righteous people in Sodom, I will spare the entire city for their sake. Then Abraham spoke again. Since I have begun, let me speak further to my Lord, even though I am but dust and ashes. Suppose there are only 45 righteous people rather than 50. Will you destroy the whole city for the lack of five? And the Lord said, I will not destroy it if I find 45 righteous people there. Then Abraham pressed his request further. Suppose there are only 40. And the Lord replied, I will not destroy it for the sake of the 40. Please don't be angry, my Lord, Abraham pleaded. Let me speak. Suppose only 30 righteous people are found. And the Lord replied, I will not destroy it if I find 30. Then Abraham said, Since I have dared to speak to the Lord, let me continue. Suppose there are only 20. And the Lord replied, Then I will not destroy it for the sake of the 20. Finally, Abraham said, Lord, please don't be angry with me if I speak one more time. Suppose only 10 are found there. And the Lord replied, Then I will not destroy it for the sake of the 10. When the Lord had finished his conversation with Abraham, he went on his way, and Abraham returned to his tent. All right, that is all of Genesis 18. We are going to take it from the top, and we are going to actually just go through the PowerPoint verse by verse, breaking it down, just kind of, just exploring what is in the Bible. So give me 1 second to share my screen again. Mm, excuse me. Hope y'all had a great day. I hope everything is going well. All right, so our title tonight is called When God Answers Your Prayer. I'm specifically referring to really Abraham and Sarah because I'm sure they both prayed for a son, a child through all their years of marriage. And so this is when God is answering that prayer specifically. Most of the chapter is that. All right, so we're starting from the top in verse 1. It starts off by saying, The Lord appeared again to Abraham near the oak grove belonging to Mamre. One day, Abraham was sitting at the entrance to his tent during the hottest part of the day. I love the description that the Bible gives. For one, it's confirming for us that this is not the same conversation that the Lord had just had in Genesis 17 with Abraham when he changed his name and he told him initially about his son. This is again. It says the Lord appeared again to Abraham. It tells us where he appeared to him at, and it tells us what Abraham was doing. So the oak grove belonging to Mamre means that Abraham was at home. Home being he lived in the oak grove belonging to Mamre. It told us that a few chapters ago. He lived among the Ammonite people. And so it's telling us that he was at home when the Lord appeared to him again. And he was sitting at the entrance to his tent during the hottest part of the day. So it's even describing this, and I love to visualize like how these things play out. So it's telling us that Abraham was sitting in his tent. He's in his tent because it's the hottest part of the day. So like you're obviously going to be in the shade. And the hottest part of the day is usually like that 2 o'clock hour, 3 o'clock hour. It's going to usually be like your hottest time of the day, sometime in the earlier afternoon. And so it's describing to us like what's going on, where Abraham is, where the Lord is appearing, and just how that happened. So these visuals are critical. He looked up and noticed 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he ran to meet them and welcomed them, bowing low to the ground. So that tells us right there, Abraham knew exactly who they were. He knew it was the Lord. He knew who was appearing before him. This is not the first time that he has encountered the Lord. This is not the first time that he has talked to him. This is something that Abraham is familiar with. And because he's familiar with it and it's not like something new that he wouldn't be expecting, he had the proper reaction. It says that when he noticed them, He saw them and he ran to meet them. He went to them. We are supposed to pursue God. He is here, he is near. We have to choose him. We have to say, Lord, and he will answer yes. We have to do that, reaching out. He's already there. So when he saw them, he ran to meet them and welcomed them. This is how hospitable Abraham was, bowing low to the ground. That is the sort of introduction or the reverence rather that Abraham is demonstrating, and that is so important. You cannot just go to God any kind of way. Yes, he will accept you. I know the churches say come as you are, but like there is a certain way to approach the throne. There's a certain way to approach El Shaddai. Remember in the last chapter we learned about El Shaddai, God Almighty. There is a certain way. He is not just your homeboy, homegirl, where you gonna be like, hey, what's up? That's not it. He came with reverence. He recognized who they are. He came to approach them and he bowed low to the ground. We have to watch the posture that we're coming with so that we're actually demonstrating in our heart that we understand what it is we need to understand and recognize that God is superior. He is not a coworker. He is not a peer. He is superior. Will he be like casual and friendly? Yes, but he is superior. So every time you see in this interaction, it's going to be the authority that God has that we are to reverence. So it doesn't matter what interaction, what question you're asking, it needs to have a sense of authority and respect. That's what Abraham demonstrated. Let's keep going. Now we get to verse 3 and it says, my Lord, he said, if it pleases you, stop here for a while. Rest in the shade of this tree while water is brought to you to wash your feet. And since you honored your servant with this visit, let me prepare some food to refresh you before you continue on your way, on your journey. All right, they said, do as you have said. Now, what I really like about this verse, I could have stopped here when I was like studying it. It told us in verse 1 that the Lord appeared again to Abraham. And then Abraham uses this term, my Lord, to refer to God. Now, remember, we've already been talking about how like Hagar had this personal relationship. This is a personal relationship, like type of term that Abraham is using towards God. Yes, we know who the Lord is, but he's saying, my Lord. He's saying, you are my Lord. He's recognizing Yah as his Lord. And remember, we talked about last time and before about God being a title. It's not the name. So when I say Yah, it's referring to part of the name of God, Yahweh, Yahuwah, Jehovah. It's all got that Yah-Y-H in the beginning. And so he is referring to him as my Lord. He's not saying, oh, the Lord. He's saying, my Lord. That is a completely different, of course, it's reverential, of course, it's showing authority, but that's a completely different connection to just referring to God. You're saying, in verses saying, God, help me. My God, will you please help? Like when you're saying you're personalizing, you're owning it. You are posturing him first in your heart. So my Lord is important. He said, my Lord, he said, if it pleases you, that's again that reverence, as he's speaking to him. Stop here for a while. Rest in the shade of this tree while water is brought to wash your feet. Since you have honored your servant with this visit, let me prepare some food to refresh you before you continue on your journey. Abraham is demonstrating the proper way to be hospitable. He's offering water to wash the feet. Washing of the feet is a very symbolic and appropriate and hospitable thing to do because they wore a lot of sandals. So you're going to get a lot of dust and dirt and just rocks and all kinds of things on your feet. So one of the first things that they make sure they do, they might not take a bath every day. They wash their hands and feet because that's what it's going. You're touching so much stuff, and that's what's going to attract on your body. So washing of the feet is very symbolic. It's the same way that when we read about Jesus in the Last Supper, the Passover meal that he was eating with his disciples, and we read about, the washing of the feet that Jesus did for his disciples. Like this is the same timeless, not even just tradition, but the same timeless habits that have lasted, because those are the types of things we're supposed to do, washing hands and feet. So that is a very hospitable thing. He's offering all of the hospitality. He's like, let me do these things for you. And I want to pause here because people get very confused as to who God is and how he shows up. So let me clarify by saying that God is not just some pie in the sky, as people would say. He's personable. In this whole interaction, God is in person, in human form. He's in front of Abraham. Abraham is literally talking to him. I want you to visualize it and I want you to make sure you're understanding that as we read the text. This is not a spirit that's in front. This is a physical person with feet who is about to eat. This is not the wind that went by when it was like in Moses in Exodus. This is actually a physical being. God can be a physical being. God can be whoever and however he wants to show up. You cannot limit his form. Yes, we know that he is a spirit, but that does not mean that he cannot take form. And I don't mean that in a super like wooey kind of way, but I just don't like when people limit him and saying like, oh, he just resides in the sky. He gonna come wherever he wanna come, and here he is physically on earth because he's got some business he's going to handle, which we'll see at the end of the towards the end of the chapter. So think of God and think of Abraham as sitting there having this conversation. Now it's multiple because we know that God is three in one. Um, and I know that may sound a little off, but it's multiple. You will see where the multiple comes in because there's a we in here. Um, so he is, and if it's not the triune God, at least we know that he's accompanied with angels at minimum. So it says rest in the shade. He's offering him rest as part of his hospitality. He's offering him to be able to clean himself, and then he's offering him food. Okay, so refreshing your physical body, refresh your spirit, rest. So he's permitted to do that. Now, what I have here, last week I showed you all these names of God that we've been uncovering in the different chapters in Genesis, and I added the Adon. I think it's Adon, yeah, Adonai and Adonai word, which means my Lord. Now, usually it's depending on if it's the singular or the plural that it's referring to. So when he says my Lord, is the Adon, which is like a singular. When you see Adonai being referred to in the Bible, it's usually Adonai, which is the plural. Either way, I added it to our list now because we have a term that means my Lord. So that is a name of God. Now we're going to go to verse 6. It says, so Abraham ran back to the tent and said to Sarah, so, okay, God has given him permission to go and prepare all the things that you just told me. So then he goes back to the tent. He says, hurry, get 3 large measures of your best flour, knead it into dough, and bake some bread. Then Abraham ran out to the herd and chose a tender calf and gave it to his servant, who quickly prepared it. When the food was ready, Abraham took some yogurt and milk and the roasted meat, and he served it to the men. As they ate, Abraham waited on them in the shade of the trees. Remember, see, as they ate, that's the plural. Okay, so as soon as God gives him permission, first of all, the fact that he asks permission to demonstrate to God, because he knows and understands that this is the supreme. This is God Almighty, who I've spoken to, who I've interacted with. I understand he is not my peer. He is not necessarily human. But if he's okay with it, let me try to offer some hospitality. So he offered him hospitality. So he quickly is responding to the instructions that he was just permitted to do. He went and told his wife Sarah to prepare with her best flour. You do not just give, even though he's here in human form and acting normal, you do not just give him normal food. Your best flour. Knead it into dough, so that means add some water, oil, the liquids that you use, and bake some bread. You do not just give God anything. He do not get leftovers. He gets the first and the best of everything. That's the exact way that we should be responding and acting in our relationship with him, is to give him our best. Why would we give him, let's say at the end of the day, you barely have energy, and that's the energy that you're giving to God? It's something as simple as that. You need to give him your best. If your best is early in the morning, he needs to get your best, your first. That's why I like, just being able to spend time with God early in the morning. It'll bless your day. It'll bless your day to set the tone for your day, and it'll bless you and continue that relationship to strengthen because He gets the best. So in this example, like ties had happened before, but this is an example of what will later become the Levitical sacrifices, with the flour and even with the calf. So the second thing that he does after Sarah is gone with the bread, the second thing he does is he chooses a tender calf and gave it to his servant who quickly prepared it. Now, a calf is referring to a young one, a baby, a tender calf, meaning it's a certain age. Now, if you know anything about the sacrifices, usually the goat or cow that you would choose would be, or a ram would be like 3 years old. So that tender calf description is referring exactly to that. So not only did he give like it's like a foreshadowing of what will become the sacrifice of the bread, it's also a foreshadowing of what will become the type of sacrifice for the meats that God accepted as sacrifices in Leviticus. So sorry, y'all, my allergies are bothering me today. But this is what he quickly went and did. And so this is just an example. This is the meal he's preparing for the Lord to eat. So he got bread, he got meat. And then when the food was ready, Abraham took some yogurt. So obviously they already had some yogurt and milk, and roasted the meat and the roasted meat, sorry, that was already prepared, and he served it to the men. So that was their meal. They had the milk, they had yogurt, they had the meat, and they had bread. That's their meal. And as simple as it may sound to us, this was a very fulfilling meal. It was a very it was a meal that was done in haste so that it could, he could feed him quickly and be hospitable and respectful of his time and what he's got going on. And most importantly, this is a gift to God. This is something he is giving. Abraham is giving of what he has to him in that way, based on what is needed, or you can say is needed, based on what he can perceive might be a need or benefit to God. So this is the way that he's doing it is definitely a foreshadowing of the sacrifices to come that are in Leviticus. And as they ate, Abraham waited on them in the shade of the trees. It did not say Abraham acted like their peer and went and ate with them. That's not what happened. Abraham waited on them. So anything they needed, he could come and give it. Do y'all know that Abraham is the master of his household? Do y'all understand that he is the master? So that he had, remember when they went to fight, I think it was it 318 men when they went to fight, when Lot got taken by those kings who came from Babylon, and Abram at the time went and rescued Lot. I think it was 318 trained men in his household. At minimum, that's how many servants and people that he had working. I mean, we're not just talking about a man with one tent and some cows over here. I mean, he would have covered a vast amount of the land because he had so many herds. Remember, him and Lot got into it because it was like, hey, my herds and your herds is too much. So we got to split. We got to do something with this. And he allowed Lot to choose whichever best portion of the land he wanted. Remember, that's the size of what we're working with Abraham. He is the master, the owner of all the wealth, all the sheep, the cattle, the goats, the silver, the gold, all the fine jewelry, all the fine clothing, all of the land and the whatever he owns is Abraham's. He is owning and running and governing all of that. And he is the one who waits on them. Now, he may have had somebody else wash the Lord's feet, but Abraham waited on them in the shade of the trees. He let them eat and he gave them whatever they would need. There is never a situation where you should be like in leadership, you should be running something where you cannot step in and do what needs to be done as a leader, and you cannot work and you cannot show and you cannot demonstrate that you can submit to authority. There should never be a situation where it's like, oh, I got people who do that. No, that's okay for certain things, but sometimes you got to step it up and you got to be that one who's serving. So Abraham can be the master, but he can also be the servant. And that's what I really love about this story. He's demonstrating both sides of being a master and being a servant. And we need to do the same things in our lives too. All right, let's go to 9. Where is Sarah, your wife? The visitors asked. She's inside the tent, Abraham replied. So this is them eating. While they're eating, they say, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" Visitors, plural, right? "She's inside the tent," Abraham replied. So Sarah done baked the bread or had to be a bread baked, and she is not there with him. So they ask about her. Then one of them said, "I will return to you about this time next year, and your wife, Sarah, will have a son." Now, part of me thinks that they came and stopped here to make sure Sarah knew that she would have a son. They already told Abraham that he would have a son this time next year. Right after that, this is another appearance of the Lord, and he's telling Abraham again that his wife Sarah is going to have a son. In case Abraham didn't relay the message properly, that he was going to have a son by Sarah. We don't know. We don't know that he didn't. We don't know that he did. I'm just saying that this could have been a way that it played out. God himself came and made sure that she could hear it from his mouth that she was going to have a son. So it says Sarah was listening to this conversation from the tent. Abraham and Sarah were both very old by this time. Remember, Abraham was 99. That's what we read last week in the chapter. I believe Sarah was 89, if I'm not mistaken. They were very old, and Sarah was long past the age of having children. So she laughed silently to herself and said, "How could a worn out woman like me enjoy such pleasure? Especially when my master, my husband, is so old." So she acknowledging both of their age and both of the negatives, like, I don't know really how this can happen, because she's thinking in a like a biological sort of scientific thought process of like women get too old to have children. She understands how that works. Women get too old to have children, and so she's like, I don't really understand how someone like me could have a child. But lo and behold, this is what happens. God is literally answering her prayer in this moment. You probably could never imagine being an almost 90-year-old woman, having prayed for children for so long and not being able to bear a child. But then you allowed your husband to go somewhere else to bear a child because you believed you could not. 13 years ago, you allowed your husband to go and do that, because Ishmael at this point is 13, as we learned in chapter 17 last week. So this whole moment of her saying, "How could a worn-out woman like me?" is a very legitimate concern, because she understands it from a biological standpoint. This is God answering the prayer, and this is the response. Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, 'Can an old woman like me have a baby?'" Here's God. "Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." Sarah was afraid, so she denied it, saying, "I didn't laugh." But the Lord said, "No, you did laugh." So I love that interaction with them, because God is like, "Okay, I know you don't believe anything is humanly possible, but is anything too hard for the Lord? Is it anything?" So he's about to prove to them that there is nothing that is too hard for him. He said, "I will return this time next year." He's confirming what he said. He said, "I said what I said. I will return about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Nothing is too hard for me." Even when the promise seems like it's out of the timeline that we have set for it, is anything too hard for the Lord? That's what we need to be asking ourselves. So then he confirms that he's going to return and see a son. And so because Sarah was in a moment of like, "Oh snap, I didn't realize he would know what I was saying," she's trying to deny it. And God is not calling her a liar. He's not calling her out and saying, "No, you lying. Yeah, I'm not gonna give it to you." He said, "No, you did. Like, I heard you. It's okay. You said what you said, but believe what I said." Right. And that was just a sweet interaction. It was no punishment in it. It's just, this is what happened. Now, I paralleled it with how the response was with Abram, because Abraham did the same thing that Sarah did. That's why their son is named Isaac, because they both laughed. Uh-oh. Sorry, Facebook. They both laughed. So this is how Abraham had replied the prior time that God appears to them. It says in Genesis 17, verses 15 through 22, then God said to Abraham, regarding Sarai, your wife, her name will no longer be Sarai. From now on, her name will be Sarah, and I will bless her and give you a son from her. Yes, I will bless her richly, and she will become the mother of many nations. Kings of nations will be among her descendants. Then Abraham bowed down to the ground, but he laughed to himself. See this laughter in disbelief. How could I become a father at the age of 100? He thought. And how can Sarah have a baby when she is 90 years old? So Abraham said to God, may Ishmael live under your blessing. So this is when Abraham is like, I mean, thanks, Lord, but Ishmael's already here, so maybe he could just take the blessing because this is not like really physically possible. They don't understand. But God replied, no. Sarah, your wife, will give birth to a son for you. You will name him Isaac, and I will confirm my covenant with him and his descendants as an everlasting covenant. As for Ishmael, I will bless him also, just as you have asked. I will make him extremely fruitful and multiply his descendants. He will become the father of 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will be confirmed with Isaac, who will be born to you and Sarah about this time next year. When God had finished speaking, he left Abraham. So that was Genesis 17. So Abraham had the same response. Now, one thing we need to know is that during this time period, a lot of people are like, well, didn't people live longer? People had started not living as long in generations after the flood. So remember, we are many generations removed from the flood. I can't remember the number of it now, but we are about at least I think 10 generations removed from the flood. So the lifespan was much, much, much shorter, and women were not able to just conceive children at like older ages anymore. So that's why they believe what they believe. All right, so let's get to verse 16. Then the men got up from their meal and looked out towards Sodom. Okay, so this is when it gets a little interesting. As they left, so they gave the instructions about them having a son. That's really what he came to do. As they left, Abraham went with them to send them on their way. And this is what the Lord is asking to everybody with him. Should I hide my plan from Abraham? For Abraham will certainly become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. I have singled him out so that he will direct his sons and their families to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. Then I will do for Abraham all that I have promised. Abraham will certainly become a great and mighty nation. This is him almost like re-summarizing all the things that he has blessed Abraham with. He is going to be the father of many nations. The world is going to be blessed through him. As a matter of fact, a nation is not the land that someone lives on. A nation is the group of people. So Abraham will produce people. He will produce descendants that will be a nation, a mighty nation. Not it doesn't matter where you are. It's the nation. The nation is the group of people. It's not the land. Um, so this is what he tells him his promise, and then the Lord told Abraham, I have heard a great outcry from Sodom and Gomorrah because their sin is so flagrant. Oh, flagrant. That's a word right there. It's like disrespectful, but it's just like out there, like just flagrant. Their sin. Remember who is in Sodom and Gomorrah? His nephew Lot. So the Lord is asking, should I tell Abraham because he knows that his family is associated with this city, Sodom and Gomorrah. He tells him, I am going down to see if their actions are as wicked as I have heard. If not, I want to know. We serve such a good God that when people bring accusations against us, he's gonna come and find out. He's gonna come and see. He's gonna come send somebody or go himself to see what it is that's going on. Yes, I know he's omniscient. He can see all. He knows all. Um, However, in this situation, he came to see the exact standing of the city for himself because their sin is so flagrant. Everybody been crying about what's going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. Everybody been crying about what's going on in this location, and America's doing this, and the Epstein files doing it. Everybody's been crying out. The Lord is gonna come see about it. That's the type of God we serve. So he said he wants to know. So Abraham is getting this information for the first time, obviously. The other men turned and headed down towards Sodom, but the Lord remained with Abraham because he knew that Abraham would have questions or he would want to express something. Because again, Abraham's nephew Lot, his wife, and their children are there in that city. So that's his family. So he's gonna be concerned about his family. God, knowing this information, look at how Abraham approaches the Lord, what he asks him, how he asks him, and then look at how God responds to each of these situations. Abraham approached him and said, "Will you sweep away both the righteous and the wicked? Suppose you find 50 righteous people living there in the city. Will you sweep it away and not spare it for their sakes? Surely you wouldn't do such a thing, destroying the righteous along with the wicked. Why, you would be treating the righteous and the wicked exactly the same. Surely you wouldn't do that. Should not the judge of all the earth do what is right?" So look at the way that Abraham is approaching him. He's not necessarily yelling. He is genuinely, and this is how we can be with God. He is genuinely, he already knows authority because he's already expressed his authority, God's authority. He's already bowed and worshiped. God has already seen that. So when he's expressing this genuine concern of the righteous having to be swept away with the wicked, he is genuinely concerned really about his family. Surely you would not do such a thing. And he's also comparing what he knows about God and comparing that to the reality of what's about to happen, because he knows and understands that God can just wipe something out, and he will wipe something out. So he is genuinely asking this. Oh, surely you wouldn't do that. Surely not the judge of all the earth would do what is right. So he is just confirming that who he knows God to be is a judge and is a righteous judge at that, would actually righteously judge and not just destroy everybody. When the Lord only told him, he's just going down to check it out because it's been an outcry and their sins are flagrant. That's how bad they are. The Lord replied, "If I find 50 righteous people in Sodom, I will spare the entire city for their sake. If I find." Then Abraham spoke again. "Since I have begun," this is respectful again, "since I have begun, let me speak further, my Lord." My Lord, remember, he is calling him my Lord. "Please let me speak further. Even though I am but dust and ashes." He is acknowledging that he don't know nothing. And that's what we have to acknowledge. You know what, God, I don't think I agree, but I don't really know nothing. Can you teach me? Can you tell me? Can I get a little bit of information just so I can better understand? Because I am not worthy. And that is what he is expressing about himself. So he says, "Suppose there are only 45 righteous people rather than the 50. Will you destroy the whole city for a lack of 5?" And the Lord said, "I will not destroy it if I find 45 righteous people there." I won't do it. Let's keep going. If I find. Then Abraham pressed his request further. So this is a lot of genuineness that's coming from Abraham. He's being very authentic. He's asking because he is again concerned. I believe that God knows his concern. He's responding based on his concern, trying to help him understand what's going to go down, but understand why it's going to go down as well. He's giving him that time during this conversation to figure that out. Suppose there are only 40. Lord replied, "I will not destroy it for the sake of the 40. Please don't be angry, my Lord," Abraham pleaded. "Let me speak. Suppose only 30 righteous people are found." And the Lord replied, "I will not destroy it if I find 30. If. Then Abraham said, "Since I have dared to speak to the Lord, let me continue. Suppose there are only 20. And the Lord replied, "Then I will not destroy it for the sake of the 20. It's giving how young children ask, like, for the same stuff over and over and over again. "Can I have this? Well, what about that? Well, what about that? And what about that?" And you're just like, why do you keep, it's kind of like irritating to us for them to keep asking. But for them, they're trying to uncover some information. They're genuinely trying to. And this is how God is responding. Look how patient God is being with him. "Then I won't destroy it for the sake of the 20. That's patience. That's understanding in his interactions. Finally, Abraham said, Lord, please don't be angry with me if I speak one more time. Suppose only 10 are found there. And the Lord replied, that I will not destroy it for the sake of the 10. If I find righteousness, he's not going to destroy it. When the Lord had finished his conversation with Abraham, because now remember, Abraham is well aware of God's destruction. He knows how the flood happened. He's keenly aware of how the flood happened. So he knows some destruction can go down real quick. But when the Lord finished his conversation with Abraham, he went on his way, and Abraham returned to his tent. And that's how it leaves us on that kind of cliffhanger on like, well, what's going to happen? What's going on with Sodom? We won't know until next time. With that being said, are there any questions? I wanted to point out this part because I wanted there to people to understand the patience that God has with us. When we come to Him with questions, what we ought to really do is make sure that um, the way we come to God is appropriate. We want to make sure that we are genuinely asking something out of our curiosity, our concern. We don't want to act arrogant like we know something or we deserve something or he gotta tell us or we no, you don't. You don't own nothing. You don't deserve anything. He don't owe you a darn thing. So that's the way we have to approach God. And then His response, because He understands our hearts, right? That's what David taught us. The Lord knows my heart. He's going to respond to us in a genuine way with all the patience in the world, understanding our heart, and that's what we're responsible for. We do have to watch the way that we come to God. We do have to make sure that we understand that He is an authority. That's what happened with Job and Job's situation. Job was starting to say some things on how and why, asking all these questions as if he was there. That's why God said, was you there when I drew the boundaries of the water, of the sea, and the land? Okay, because I don't remember you being there. That means you don't know everything. That means you don't understand everything. And we have to remind ourselves all the time that we don't know and understand. I know I have to. So, if there are no questions, I have thoroughly enjoyed having you all tonight. Be sure to check your email tomorrow for your updated newsletter / Bible study guide. And I look forward to seeing you all next week on Genesis 19. Have a good one.